and started briefing on that. And that's when we had Chaplain Cash, say one last prayer to all of us together, and that would be the last time we were all together.
Hello and welcome to the Mighty Oak Show today. Glad to have you with us once again. If you're watching this show on YouTube, please take some time to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. I tell you this all the time because I know some of you aren't listening, so go ahead and do that. That lets you know when more content comes online, and would love to share that with you. For those of you that are listening at Mojo 50 or listening to the podcast, thank you for doing that. Take some time, go over to YouTube, and we'd love to share this content with you. This show is great on YouTube. However, we have a lot of other content there as well. We do several other shows, and we produce all of it for you. So take some time to look at that. That would be fantastic. Today's show is very special to me, and our guest is very special to me as well, and very excited about this. I've been really looking forward to this conversation. Our guest is Major General Fred Padilla, retired last year, 2019.
Yeah, 19.
And General Padilla has been a lot of things to me in my life, I've talked about this a lot. There are a handful of people that will make a real profound impact on you over the course of your life. Mm-hmm. And you are one of those people for me. I was talking to my wife this morning about that a little bit. It was a moment in time in my life, I think, and the events surrounding when I worked for you and what we were doing at that time, which we'll talk about today, really staged a lot of things in my mind and in my heart as I moved forward, how I look at the world and how I consider things. So, you're in town, so I'm really glad we could have this conversation.
Great to be here.
Thanks for doing it. Drove all the way from Colorado just for this show. And some family things too. So you've served in a lot of different capacities. You were the battalion commander of 1st Battalion, 5th Marines during the invasion of Iraq, and all that took place there. You were the CEO of MCRD Paris Island.
Yeah, the CG there.
CG there. Where all the recruits come through, of course, and CG also of 3rd Marine Division. Quite a career. How does one, we'll start here, how does one end up in the Marine Corps, first of all, coming from where you came from, and then some of these other places you went to later on in your career? Maybe just give us kind of an overview of.
Okay. Well, I come from an Air Force family. My dad was a career Air Force officer. 2 brothers, 2 sisters, all Air Force officers, mostly flyers, and my dad flew as well. And so I was a little, middle kid syndrome, maybe. Sure. Maybe that's what it was, because I was right in the.
You're the rebellious one.
Yeah. And the one who kind of flew below the radar all the time and got away with stuff.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the thing I think that helped me the most was I was pretty observant, being the middle kid. I watched things that were going on, and so I went to college, and if you remember back when I was going to college anyway, we had the Iranian hostage crisis and that sort of thing was going on, and we still were kind of dealing with post-Vietnam malaise, in our nation, and I felt really bad about how. Our military was treated and the Vietnam veterans were treated. I felt really bad about that because I saw it happening, and in the places we lived, because there were bases that were there, and we would see them coming home, and they just didn't get the welcome back. And so, whereas many at the time were against the military and would never choose the military as a means of serving our nation. It inspired me to, and so I remember saying to my dad that I'm going to join the military after all, and I just feel like if I don't, I will always regret it. And he goes, okay, well, what are you going to do? I go, well, I guess I'll go in the Air Force, kind of the family business kind of thing. Right. And he goes, well, what are you going to do in the Air Force? I go, well, I don't want to fly. I did not. I tried flying a little bit, and I was A, not good at it, B, didn't like it.
Not a good Air Force career.
Yeah, which those are related. Not liking something and not being good at it are related very well. But doesn't make for a good Air Force career.
Yeah.
So and my dad told me, well, you probably should think about a different service. And so I thought about the Army because I graduated, I didn't start it, but I graduated high school in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and where Fort Bragg is.
Yeah, right.
And all my friends, were pretty much, most of them were Army kids.
Yeah.
So I went to an Army recruiter, and I am a Marine because of Army recruiting. It was so bad.
They did a good job.
It was so bad.
They did a good job. I wonder how many other Marines have the same story.
Yeah, and so in stark comparison, I went to the OSO office, the Marine Recruiters OSO office, and man, I'm telling you what, they were so sharp. Yeah. And it was, I said, I want to be one of them.
Forget this Army stuff.
I didn't know much about the Marines except for, they were smaller than everybody else. And they had pretty close haircuts, and they had really cool uniforms. Right. That's it. I mean, that's kind of all I knew about what the Marine Corps did. And the Marine Sims kind of thing, which really kind of says it all. But I remember all my recruiters by name, and the OSO by name, and I just was so impressed. I mean, they ran the PFT with me when it was really inspiring.
That's incredible. I've talked to a lot of Marines who would say that their recruiter saved their life. Yeah. I mean, that's the guy or girl who reached into their life and put them on track.
Yeah. I certainly saw a lot of evidence of that when I was at Parris Island, as a CG there, because I would come into the back of a squad bay during the DI Foot Locker talks.
Yeah, right.
And man, some of these kids come from some tough backgrounds, tough situations. Yep. And for them to make it there, and for that recruiter to put them on that path is amazing.
Right.
And it does. It saves people.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah. What year did you go into the Marine Corps?
83.
83. So a lot of things happened after that. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
you were in Somalia, and then took commands at various points. And I had the privilege of attending your retirement ceremony. Yeah. Guys like General Joe Dunford and others were your peers at the time, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah. Well, so I was in 3rd Battalion, 6th Marines, and that was, that was a great experience for me as a junior officer, because I was a first lieutenant. I mean, I was a lieutenant when I got, obviously, 2nd lieutenant, then 1st lieutenant while there. General Dunford was one of the company commanders, captain, company commander. General Greganis was one of the captain, company commanders. General Waldhauser was one of the captain, company commanders, and then went on to be the OPSO, the S3 for the battalion. Our XO was retired Brigadier General Terry Paul, and then Jim Lukeman was the 3 Alpha, and then went on to take Lima Company. When you say peers, I was kind of a peer because I had the experience of being able to be a company commander alongside of those great Marines. But the thing I'll tell you about that experience is that, and there were other officers, company commanders. That my first one really was Steve Carpenter. And he was a very interesting guy because he was a MESEP guy, a MESEP Marine, so prior enlisted. Right. But he had come to us from the Naval Academy as a electrical engineering instructor there. So he was a double E guy. Yeah. And so and he's a country boy from Ocala, Florida. So and he hunted he'd hunted all the time. Whenever he had the opportunity to do it, he would be hunting. Wow. So he was awesome in the woods. He could land nav just a super smart guy. Ranger school, did all that stuff, and electrical engineering to boot. But he really gave me put the responsibility of me to plan company training events, and he would sit down with me and make sure everything was tied to learning objectives, and that you had the ability to evaluate the training. And essentially, and so you can remediate. So it was a systematic approach to training that he was teaching me as a 2nd lieutenant, and that mentoring and that teaching was invaluable. It stayed with me for the rest of my time in the Marine Corps and to today.
It's incredible. I talked to Steve Arms about this. Yeah. Steve Arms was of course, at 1-5 with us.
Sure was.
I say with us. He was, as the 3, he was my boss for a little while.
Yeah.
And we talked about mentoring a little bit there, but my very first company commander when I was a rifle platoon commander was Cal Worth, who's a 1-star now, and incredible just human being apart from everything else.
Very much so.
I worked for Steve Arms. I worked for a lot of people over the course of the time I was there. And a weapons company, my company commander was Pete Farnham, who had a tremendous influence on me as well. And along the way, I felt mentored. I didn't feel led in the sense that you will do what I tell you to do, but there was the teaching that was taking place. I left the Marine Corps, and I've learned those lessons and used those lessons over the course of my life. Can you talk about the difference between mentorship and then just a heavy-handed leadership? Because they are different things.
Yeah, way different. I mean, one is much more inspirational than the other, and one brings out, the mentoring brings out the best that people have to offer.
Right.
And you do it with a sense of, when you mentor with a sense of humility because you were mentored. That's what was my experience. And the rest of those Marines, I suspect it was the same with them, but I don't want to speak for them. But for me, I was such a beneficiary of great mentorship. Yeah. And it impacted me so in such a positive way that I felt compelled to pay that forward, and to be the same kind of mentor, or to aspire to be the same kind of mentor that I had, because it made all the difference in the world. I mean, I'm like many, came in the Marine Corps with a little bit of a I'm not sure how this is going to turn out attitude. Did I make the right choice? Right. When I finally showed up to after OCS, TBS, and infantry officers course, that's all not real. You learn a lot there, but that's not the fleet. And when I showed up to fleet, I remember thinking, I'm home. This is where I belong, and I love what I do. Yeah. And the main reason why I loved what I did was because I was being mentored and taught, and people were taking the time. It would have been much easier for them to just give you the knife hand and say, do this. Yeah. But no, and it would have been much easier for then Captain Steve Carpenter to sit, to just do all the planning for training exercises by himself. Yeah. But or just tasked me to do it and say do it. But he sat down with me and really taught me how to do it.
Yeah, it's incredible too, and I think as a human being, we need to get beyond asking what can people do for me, and instead ask how can I invest in other people so that they're successful down the road. Yeah, and that's what mentoring does, I think. Yeah. Well,
and so we talked a little bit about Colonel, Captain, Colonel, General Dunford. I mean, because we know him in all those capacities. But one thing he said, and this was actually when I was talking to him. Went out in Okinawa when I had 3rd Marine Division, and he was the commandant then, and he came out and visited, or maybe it was the ACMAC. I can't remember which one he was at the time, but he came out and he said something that it's always been etched in my mind. I believed it, but I just heard him say it. It really drove it home, and that is that you really your job as a leader. The final report card, it has yet to really be tallied, and you won't find out what kind of leader you really were and the impact of your leadership until some of it will be right away, but a lot of it then will be later on, years down the road. How did those Marines that you led, how did they do in the long run? In the short run, we know. I mean, but they're Marines at the time too. Yeah. Because and when I think about 1-5, we had a lot of advantages. One of the advantages, a lot of them. One of the advantages was time. We came together after the deployment. You guys got back from the deployment in 2000. Right. And from Okinawa, From Okinawa, and then 9/11 happened. I took command in August. 9/11 happened in September, and that changed the nature of what we were going to be doing for the remainder of our time there. But we had time to build that cohesive team, so that was good fortune. The other good fortune was we had some freaking awesome people. Yes. It's just some of the best Marines I don't know. From from the top to the bottom. I mean, from the Sergeant Major and XO down to fire team leaders and Marines that are just in the front line. They're all of them just awesome.
Yeah.
And then and company commanders, platoon commanders, you name it, we had it. So you had all we needed was time. Just a little bit of time to make that into a cohesive team.
Yeah.
So that when you have something happen like April 10th, for example,
sure,
where we're attacking into Baghdad, and just about everything that can go wrong does, every Marine knew what they had to do.
That's right.
And it wasn't because of me, or even because of you.
Yeah.
We all knew. Everybody knew, and everybody did what had to be done.
Right.
And to watch that, to be in a city the size of Los Angeles at night with no lights, with night vision equipment, but under fire all the time, the whole time.
Yes.
And then to be able to make it to our 3 objectives, and then ultimately secure the objective that was assigned to us, by the division. I mean, we had vehicles everywhere, but it all came together at the end.
All over the city at one point.
All over the city, but it all came together at the end. How does that happen?
Yeah.
How does that happen? It's a bunch of people it's a bunch of Marines that knew what needed to get done and did it in spite of the significant hardship and the overwhelming uncertainty, and I'm sure there was I'm sure there was no shortage of Marines that were feeling their own mortality at that point.
Right.
There was fear too that had to be overcome. So
it's incredible to see very young people. We're talking about 18, 19-year-old young people, men, perform the way they did in a situation like that one in Baghdad. Yeah,
it's one of the most satisfying, heartwarming experiences I've ever had was watching that, that. And there's on Facebook sometimes there's a little thing that it's on some of the Marine pages about you'll never know the experience of being a 19-year-old filling out your will. Mm. Yeah, they know what they're up against. Yeah. They know what could happen. Yeah. And yet they go forward. Yeah. They go forward and they accomplish the mission, and it was truly something. I wish every American could have seen what we saw. Right. I wish every American could have seen it.
Yeah, it changes your perspective on so many things. It's funny, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but even those relationships from now 18 years ago, a lot of those Marines that we served with, we go back 20 years. And to have a relationship with someone that you only see periodically over that period of time, but there's nothing like that bond of a moment like that.
Yeah, it shouldn't surprise me, but it does anyway. Right. It's just so heart. It's just good for my heart because to see that and then to be contacted by Marines. Right. I learned a little bit of this when I was on I&I duty back in 93 to 96. 93 to 96, I'm on I&I duty. And I got plugged into the Marine Corps League and a lot of retired organizations and stuff. And some of these Marines that are in the Marine Corps League, they served less than 4 years because of the Vietnam. Some of them weren't serving the whole time. Some of them got wounded, and so they were out.
I think they had 2.5 year enlistments for a while.
Yeah, they did.
Too,
they had short enlistments, and but some of these, but for almost every one of them, to the man. That was the defining moment of their life. That was the foundation upon which they built the rest of their life, and they've become, some of them, super successful. Right.
But that's the defining moment.
That's the defining moment, and of course, some of them are like executives. Right. But when they come back to the Marine Corps League meeting, they're just a bunch of Marines. They're Lance Corporal, whatever, and it's friggin' hilarious. Yeah, it's just hilarious.
Man, there's a lot of things we could talk about. I'd like to ask you about when we went into Iraq. Mm-hmm. That's a historical event. People can read about it, but not what took place there. So 1-5 was in Kuwait for a while. We got the call to go in. In fact, there's a picture of it floating around somewhere, but you called all of the unit leaders together underneath this kind of
tent,
tent, and you're starting to say, okay, tomorrow probably here's when we're going to step off. Somebody handed you a yellow piece of paper and said it's go time.
Yeah. What had happened was I had just come from the regimental headquarters. We got briefed in. Here's the timeline. It's going to be tomorrow morning, dawn, whatever.
Yeah.
And the confidence in that was very, very high, like 90% that we were going to be going the next morning.
Yeah.
But what was at least implied to me was that if it doesn't happen then, it will be later. It'll be after.
That's the earliest it's going to be is tomorrow.
Yeah, that was kind of. So I'm like, okay. And then and while I was there, they say, hey, pick up your letters from the division commander to give to every Marine. And I'm like, letters from the division commander to every Marine. Why didn't he just tell us what he wants to say, and then we'll tell it to our Marines?
Right.
Then I read the letter and I said, okay, this is good.
Yeah.
And this is something personal.
That was the no better friend,
no worse enemy. Right. The letter about we were going to be going across the line of departure together, have confidence into each other in Marine air above you, all that. It was awesome. Yep. It was really good in General Mattis's typical way. No one states it quite the way he does, and he cuts through all the fluff and gets to the heart of the matter.
Yep.
And so I thought it was very good, and I was really happy to come back and hand that out to everybody. But so I'd get everybody together we're out there underneath Caminet to brief them, and I'm going through my notes and telling you this. Okay, we're going to do this. We're going to do that. This is the timeline. Make sure we're make sure we're doing these things in the meantime. And all of a sudden, initially it was they just called out of the C7. The command track where the men in the radios and said, "Hey, sir, got a radio call for you." I go, "Take a message."
I'm having a meeting.
I'm having a meeting, and then they said it again, "Sir, it's what was their call sign?"
For the division.
For regiment.
Oh, regiment. I don't remember.
But they said it's the 3.
Yeah.
And I go, "Take a message." God, I was like, "Can't you understand?" And then finally, I'll never forget it. The comm chief comes out with a yellow canary message for him,
right?
And he kind of like emphatically says, hands it to me in a manner to suggest, "Read this right now." And I read it once, and I read it again, and then I read it again. Yeah. I read it like 3 times before I said anything, because I just want to make sure. Did I read that right?
Yeah.
Is my speed reading failing me right now? And then I realized what he was saying. I go, okay, basically belay my last. We're going now as soon as we can.
Yep.
And started briefing on that. And that's when we had Chaplain Cash, say one last prayer to all of us together, and that would be the last time we were all together.
That's right.
That's incredible. That was a heck of a moment.
So what's going through your mind, maybe then, but more as we got into the night? I think we stepped off close to midnight.
Yeah.
It was pitch black.
Dust in the air.
We're rolling toward the berm. We had been to the berm. We're rolling toward the berm. Things are happening. We can see the artillery even going in the sky. All these things are happening.
A lot of artillery.
What's going through your mind as the battalion commander? And I think it should be stated, because it's very important to understand. The division has an objective. The division commander decides that the regimental commander, 5th Marines, you guys are the ones who are going. Mm-hmm. And then he decides that it's going to be you that's taking your battalion.
Yeah.
That's a lot of weight on one person.
Yeah.
So you've got the responsibility to hire, but then you have the responsibility to, those Marines.
Which is the overriding responsibility.
So what are you thinking when all of that's happening?
I think one of the things that maybe training brings, and being trained and being a professional Marine,
right,
is that you can and I refer to it. I am really good at compartmentalizing.
Sure. Right.
I really can compartmentalize so that I can put things that aren't that I can. I'll deal with that later.
Sure.
I can compartmentalize that and put that out of the way so that I have a clear focus of what needs to happen. So what I was thinking at that moment was, I was thinking timeline. I was thinking about the fact that we didn't have pre-planned fires. We had no close air support.
Right.
The air tasking order that was in play for the next morning was not in play for that evening. So it was all quick fire planning.
Yeah. Right.
So we're doing that on the fly,
right,
kind of thing. And I'm just, I want to make sure that we, that I'm thinking things like I got to make sure that we shift this because I don't want our guys running into our own fire. You're thinking those things all the time, and then navigation.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you know this or not, but we had a tank platoon that was the spearhead of our battalion, the front of our battalion.
I did not know that.
And I was behind them, kind of pretty far forward in a Humvee with them. But I had the Blue Force tracker in there and everything. But as we kept going, this tank platoon, as soon as they started going, they would go in the wrong direction, and I would stop them and I said, "No, you need to go this way." And they'd go that way and then start going in a different direction. Something was wrong, but they kept getting off the correct azimuth, and everybody was guiding off of them.
Yeah, right.
I mean, we had obviously the company behind them, but the companies that were part of the wedge.
Yep.
We had one on one side and one on the other side that were all guiding off of him, and he was taking us in the wrong direction. So this is not doctrinal, and this is certainly not the way you want to do it. But eventually, I got frustrated, and I drove up in front of the tank, the lead tank, and I had IR chem light on the back of my Humvee. I go, "You see that Humvee right there?" I see, "Stay on my ass until we get to the you
follow me.
You follow me." Yeah. And so I took him to the lanes going through the minefields, and when I got so I'm that's not how you're supposed to do it.
This is not in the book.
Yeah, and but I pulled off right as they were starting to go through, and I said, "Okay, there's the lane," and it was pretty clearly marked. Yeah. And they went through, and I was like, "Okay, good. At least we got in here in the right place. We're going through the breach in the minefields and everything. And it's going to be okay." And then almost immediately upon arriving into Iraq from Kuwait, we started taking fire.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I really wish that we would have got a little bit farther in there before we started taking fire. But dang, and so we had a pretty good little firefight there for a while. And but what was I thinking? I was thinking all those things about making sure we're in the right place at the right time and meeting the timelines and and SDZs, the surface danger zones for weapon systems, to make sure that that we can avoid blue on blue, or fratricide.
Yeah.
I was thinking about all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then the objectives themselves, because once we crossed, then we had to go to the gas oil separation plants, the pumping stations, and there was a pretty good amount of enemy that were in the area. So I knew we were in for a fight.
And that was all complicated because we went at night instead of during the day. Our briefing was, your markers are all visual markers. Yeah. Even, for us as the counter-mechanized platoon, the heavy guns and tows, we were supposed to split and then link up with different companies. Yeah. But all the markings were, you'll see the marking on the side of the vehicle.
Yeah.
Well, there was fuel burning, so there's smoke in the air, it's pitch black,
dust.
Vehicles are moving around, so there's dust everywhere. We couldn't see anything, so everything was...
And we were in Mop 4.
And we were in Mop 4, so we've got NBC gear on. And there were, I know personally, there was a moment where I was out in front of a vehicle kind of doing this, trying to make sure, because we knew we had dropped our own DPICM, our bombs on the side of the road, or bomblets.
Yeah.
It was just chaotic.
Yep.
Yeah, absolute chaos. The sun came up the next morning, though, and we were able to secure the objectives as we were supposed to. We set a screen line. Very significant event took place for everyone, and I'm sure for you as a combat leader, Lieutenant Shane Childers was killed, first KIA of the war in Iraq. Much has been written, much has been said about that. We just remember that actually a couple days ago. What does that do to you as the battalion commander? I'm leading these guys. Well, Shane was an incredible human being, by the way.
He was. They don't come any better.
They don't come any better.
They just don't come any better. I mean, he grew up, unlike many, he grew up knowing what he wanted to do, and did it. He wanted to be a Marine. It was from his time back in Iran when he saw the Marine embassy security guards. He said, I want to be one of those. And so he actually did a tour as an MSG Marine.
He enlisted first.
Enlisted first, and he was in in light armor reconnaissance, and then went through the MESEP program at the Citadel, where he did great. And then of course he went through all the entry level training, IOC, and then came to us from the infantry officers course to 1-5. He's one of those guys that. A couple of things jump out at me. One, we talk a lot about being critical thinkers, and some people, what they're really talking about when they say critical thinkers is squeaky wheel.
Being critical,
right? And that's not quite it. He was a critical thinker. He was, hey, there might be a better way to do this. We might have a better, use this gear this way, or we need this gear,
right?
And he was thinking about how to optimize, how we did things to accomplish our mission. He really did. I mean, and to the point where he was actually talking to me about some of this stuff, and I was really impressed with his, with his intellect and his enthusiasm. And of course, the other things that I remember hearing about him, was that, if he was a single Marine, and he had Marines that were married Marines, and then and a lot of them, especially back then, it was harder, to make ends meet, as a young married Marine.
Sure.
And so there was some, like if they were lacking something or some gear or whatever, he would get it for them.
Sure,
And he took the time to really get to know not only his Marines, but those who were married, their Marines' families. That's a leader.
Yeah.
That's a leader. I mean, he was engaged on that, and so just a tremendous young man. And so I remember, we're all over. Like you said, we were securing our objectives. Some were already secured. Some were in the process of kind of mopping up, tidying up, whatever, and getting and securing them. And I'm in my Humvee again, going around everywhere.
Right.
And I hear the call about a casualty report, and initially it's urgent, and I'm like, and then they say who it is. They kind of. With the brevity codes and whatever, just kind of, it was clear that it was Shane.
Yeah.
And I remember the sinking feeling in my stomach, and it's urgent. That's never good. How bad is it? Kind of thing. But then I said, let's go there, because we were actually on our way there anyway, to Pumping Station 2.
Yeah.
We were on our way there anyway, the Sergeant Major and my driver and myself. And so we're in a Humvee. I said, hey, step on it. Let's get there. And as we're on our way there, we get another radio call, and it said, it's now routine. Changed to routine medevac. And the Sergeant Major, I know he knew better, and but he was trying to make me feel, I think, at least for the moment, feel better. And he goes, well, shit, sir, maybe that means it's not that bad or whatever. And I said, no, Sergeant Major, that's not good.
Yeah. And
sure enough, we got there, and he had already passed away. And at that point, I'm looking at the faces of Marines that were in fighting holes or in hasty fighting positions, right there next to where their platoon commander had been worked on by 2 corpsmen, and right there where he had died and would be medevacs, or be taken away. They were looking at that, and I'm looking at the company FIST, fire support team with the company commander and FAC and weapons platoon commander and the looking down on there. They're still doing business, but also looking at what was going on, and then I see the corpsman, and I walk up to him, and one in particular, he was the corpsman named Tapley, and young guy. They flushed him out of a hospital to augment us. Good kid though, and he was just tears streaming down his eyes, blood up to his elbows, and tears streaming down his eyes. And he goes, "Sir, we did everything we could, but we just couldn't save him. I mean, he was hitting the liver, but he was. You could tell he made comments that suggested maybe they could have done more, and he was wrestling with that right then. And I said, hey, you did a good job. You did what you had to do. I mean, we can't save everybody. Sometimes you're just going to lose people. Yeah. All you can do is your best. And but he was hurting right then. And so I spent a little bit of time with him. But then I really wanted to go walk the line with, and talk to some of Shane's Marines. And I know that they knew what had happened, but every one of them that I stopped and taught, every hasty position that I stopped at, they all said, "How's our lieutenant?" And they knew how he was. I mean, they saw it, but they were hoping that somehow there a miracle, that would happen that would make it so that what they saw was not really what happened. And that's when I started thinking, what's your job right here? You're the old guy. Really, I mean, I was 42 years old. I'm the old guy, the old guy in the equation here, and I have to get them refocused. So I talked to them and I told them, hey, I know they were all hurting really bad, and so was I. I mean, I lost one of my officers and one of my Marines. Any one of them would have been hard to take, but I mentioned to them that okay, well he didn't make it, and what we have to focus on now is what you have to focus on is doing what he would have wanted you to do, and he would have wanted you to carry on, and execute like he trained you to. That's how you can honor him right now. Now we're going to honor, and I said the same thing, and I said at the meeting that we had later on that night, I said we're going to honor him appropriately, but that now is not that way. Now's not the time. We're just starting this. We got a lot of fighting to go. And I don't know what. That was from my heart. But at the same time, I'm not sure. I don't know how it was received. And it was only after I read your book on how you received that news and the way I handled it at that moment, but then how it over time, you maybe looked at it differently.
Yeah, and I did write about it in March or Die, which you did the forward for, gratefully. And I wrote about that moment because, I think for all of us, you had been in combat. You were in Somalia prior to that, but maybe Gunny Boer had been in combat. Most of the Marines had not. And so that was a new experience for all of us, and trying to process that and figure it out. And the lesson that I learned from that, looking back on it, and in that moment, you're almost angry a little bit that happened. But looking back on it, what I learned from the way you handled that was, in life, very difficult things happen that we would rather avoid, but we have to continue moving forward. And I remember the conversation that you just mentioned, the company commanders. I was included in that because of my role. That was the first time we'd all come together after Shane had been killed. And I think a lot of us, at least me, I expected for you to talk about that. And that's not what you talked about, but that you had the sense maybe that that's what needed to be talked about. You did briefly, but it was exactly what you just said. We have a job to do, and we have to continue on.
Yeah, I felt like I needed to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that wasn't the time that we we would make an attempt to honor him appropriately. That time would come, but that wasn't it. We had a lot of we had 1,200 Marines and sailors and a couple soldiers and all that. Yep. We had this huge mechanized infantry battalion, over 1,000 Marines, and every one of them meant something.
Yes.
And accomplishing the mission meant something, and I felt that was what we needed to focus on at that time. We needed to acknowledge that we lost Shane, and that we need to acknowledge that we're going to appropriately honor him, but that this wasn't the time. We got a lot of fighting to do, and we need to make sure that we do everything to ensure the success, set the success for those 1,200 Marine sailors and soldiers, and mission accomplishment.
Yeah,
that was what we needed to be doing right then. And again, but it drove home to me that we all play a role.
Yes.
And there's a reason why you have a battalion commander, and there's a reason why you have platoon commanders. The focus is different. Yeah. In many respects. Yeah. And my role at that point was to be the old guy, and the one that said, okay, here's the focus now. And I wanted to. I mean, so what you don't know is after that meeting was over with, I went back and I'll never forget this, because I had a strict rule with my driver, because he'd go get me my MREs, and he'd say, "What do you want, sir?" And I'd say, "Just stick your hand in there and pull out whatever." But I was getting jambalaya like every single guy did, and I was sick of jambalaya, and so I never got this was a fairly new one, was the cheeseburger meal or whatever. Sure. Sergeant Major, had them frequently, and so we came back, and I went back to where my little hasty little CP, which was a tent, it was caminet up, and that was it. And I went in there, and I just I sat down, and I was not feeling really good. I mean, I was allowing myself to feel the loss, and wondering, wondering how it was going to, how is this, is this going to be more of this? Yeah. But and then Sergeant Major Jones gave me the cheeseburger meal, and I thought that he was not, that was not something that he would, he's not that kind of guy, really. But in reality, he's a good freaking man, and he saw that I was hurting, and he just, hey, that little gesture, meant a lot to me. Yeah,
that leadership principle, I think, is something we all have to get a hold of. Yeah. You just said so much. My role at that time. Yeah. I think we forget sometimes. I mean, where I live right now, I'm a husband. Yeah. I'm a father. I have a role I have to play, and that is to lead the folks that God has put in my life and help them to. I define leadership as taking people from where they are to where they need to be. Yeah. To me, that's just a very simple definition. It's moving people from where they are to where they need to be. Well, you have to be able to elevate yourself above whatever's happening in order to do that. That's not easy.
No, because you're human. Right. And you feel things too. Right. Yeah, I will tell you that I will tell you that being resilient and being able to overcome these types of situations and being able to march instead of dying, kind of to steal your title here.
I stole it too, so
but to be able to do that, it all is predicated on tools that you have in your toolbox. I mean, it's metaphorically speaking. Sure. I mean, you gotta have a lot of tools, to meet the challenges and to overcome the challenges that life will inevitably send your way. Some of them are going to just hit you right in the mouth and knock you on your ass. Yeah. And it's going to be hard to get up. But you grab those tools, and I think the tool number one that you have to have is faith. Yeah. If you don't have faith, I don't know how anyone can resilient and can leverage that kind of strength without faith. And it's, boy, I tell you, it's something that I have relied on my whole life. And if it can be a quiet kind of faith, it can be a very personal kind, it can be an outward faith.
Sure.
Whatever it is for the individual, but having it gives you a huge tool in your toolbox to overcome an awful lot.
I completely agree with that, which is a lot of what we talk about in our programs and in different things. Your experience and your career and the things that you've done gives you a unique voice, I think, on that. Mm-hmm. Because for me to say that is one thing, but you've lived through all of those experiences. You've led at every level. Yeah. How is faith important? In what way is faith important?
Well, it keeps you grounded, if nothing else. When you have that faith, it also helps you not to start to spin out of control. Because there's some things that you just, because of that faith, you can give them up. Right. It helps you recognize there's some things you can't control.
Sure.
And so you have to just.
And that's okay.
And that's okay. And your faith makes that okay. Yeah. And you give it up, and give it up. And so, because I don't think he wants you to carry that around. Right. And there's been quite a few times where I've thought, I don't think God wants me to carry this one around. Yeah. I'm giving this one up to him, right now. And so that's really important. It gives you it gives you clarity, I think, of thought. That's right. Too. Yeah, when you have that faith, so I remember you remember General Van Riper? Yes. Okay. Yes. And I've stole this acronym from him. And I've been living my life by it ever since. It's hard to live by, but it's called F2C2, Faith, Family, Country, Core. And it's in that order. Faith first, family second, country third, and core last. Right. But it's in there. Right. Now the interesting thing is, it's, in many of the billets that I've held and positions that I've held, the amount of time that I spend is not in accordance with how that acronym falls out. I'm spending a lot of time on the core, and not so much on, although seemingly not so much on faith and the family and the country part, but in reality, those never leave me. Yep. I may be at work and I may be, but I've always thought of myself as one of God's Marines, and that's how we perform. Yeah. That's how we carry out our mission. And to be honest with you, that's how we come to terms with what it is we have to do at times. I'm God's Marine.
This is where God wants me to be.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And He wants me and this is the role I'm playing, for Him. And so so the faith runs through everything that I do. Yeah. When I'm serving the core. Yeah. It's with that faith. My family never leaves me. And now the difference there, because I don't want to give the sense that I can do this at the same time as we don't get to spend quantity of time with our family when you're serving your nation as a Marine. You don't get quantity of time, so you damn well better make sure that it's quality of time. Right. That's the and it's hard because you come in out of the field or something like that, and you're dragging butt, but you have little kids looking up at you. You have a wife that needs that's been holding down the fort while you were gone, and that's not easy. Right. And you can't just come home and jump on the couch and get a bag of Doritos and watch ESPN. You can't do that.
I've tried to make this point several times to service members who will say, well, how can I put my family first with the job that I have? I really believe your family understands that in the role you have in the military, you're going to be deployed, you're going to be gone, you've got all these things to do. What they don't understand is you coming home and still being gone.
Yeah.
And if you can balance those,
that's right.
then it's going to be fine.
Yeah. So, when you become a general officer, you have to attend a course called Capstone. It's run by the National Defense University. Every 1-star, every service, has to go through that within, I think, 2 years of being selected, or pinning on rather. And so, you visit all the COCOMs for all the CONUS-based combatant commanders, and then you pick an area for travel, for international travel. And then you go to that area, and then you travel through that area, and then you meet with the combatant commander that's responsible for that area. So in my case, I picked the Asia Pacific Theater to go on my trip because I felt like the chances of me being assigned there were much greater than South America or Europe.
Sure.
And so I went out there and we traveled all. We went to China, we went to Hong Kong, all these places, and. It was very good. I ultimately wound up being the CG of 3rd Marine Division, so this really was helpful to me, because it really got getting up to date in the area was important. The last stop was with the combatant commander at PACOM with then Admiral Willard, who had been my boss in the Pentagon when I was on the Joint Staff. And great guy, Admiral Willard. He was actually one of the pilots in Top Gun movie. They did the aerial combat.
Oh yeah, wow.
Pretty neat guy.
Yeah.
But everywhere we had been, all the CONUS-based combatant commanders and senior officers that we had talked to, they all said the same thing. Hey, you got to take care of yourself. You got to take the time to watch your this and that. And I'm like, they all said that. But they never got into the details of how you do that when you have so much responsibility.
Right.
And so I finally asked, because I was comfortable with him, because I had worked with him before. I said, "Hey, sir, everywhere we go, all the general officers, and combatant commanders are saying that we've got to take care of ourselves. We've got to make sure we take time to make sure that we're healthy and take time with our family." I'm just saying that there's not enough time in the day from my standpoint.
Right.
And he goes, "Yeah, Fred, there's not." He says, and that's where I got you're not going to be able to have the quantity of time to do those things. Yeah. So you just have to make sure that when you have it, anytime, that you make sure it's quality.
Yeah.
And whether it's being with your family or taking care of yourself, making sure it's quality.
How do you include your family in what you're doing?
Well, I'm retired now, so I include
when you were working the 9 to 5 of the 9 to 5.
Yeah. Well, actually,
the 24/7 of the Marine Corps.
So now I got to be honest with you. I told you this before we came in here. Yeah. I am really happy being retired, because everything I do are things that I want to do. That said, I stay busy.
Yeah.
I stay really busy, but it's a good busy.
Yeah.
And not to say that being a 24/7 Marine was bad busy. It was good busy too, for the most part. I mean, again, whether it was 3rd Marine Division or Parris Island, which both of those billets I absolutely loved. And there was a lot to include my family with my family on those things. I mean, for example, Parris Island, just for example, but it was kind of like this wherever we went. Parris Island, I mean, we have, we're responsible for all the recruiting east of the Mississippi River, and then all the recruit training east of the Mississippi River for males, and then back then, the entire United States for females.
Wow.
They all came to Parris Island.
Yeah, that's right.
But also you would get, so and you have like 45 or so graduations a year. So 45 weeks out of the year, you have graduations. Right. And then you have family days that will be, so you have America that shows up at Parris Island every week.
Incredible. Yeah.
And so we would have, that was just a super experience, being able to engage with them. My family was involved with that. We would have receptions at our house, and have people come. We had basically a reception every week at our house, and then engagement with the local community and all those kinds of things. So it was really an educational experience and very uplifting at the same time. 3rd Marine Division, kind of the same way. We're overseas, and so families are involved in that because they're there, right. And they have to, and they're part of part of being there is engaging with our host nations.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
It was good.
I feel bad for people that feel like you can't do both. I can't have a family and do this job at the same time. It has to be very intentional.
Yeah.
But it seems like a lot of people struggle, tremendously with that.
I think of my former drill instructors at 4th Battalion down at Parris Island, and that's, the 4th Battalion was the female drill instructors. Of course, now there's a lot of cross-pollination going on, which is, as we move, as we evolve a little bit more,
right,
and making everybody equal, kind of thing. But the females were a separate battalion, and they had separate drill instructors. And I have to tell you, some of the best Marines I've ever served with are some of those female drill instructors. And how they do it, I have no idea.
Yeah.
How they do it, some of them were single parents. And how they're a drill instructor.
Yeah.
I don't see how they do it, but they do, and they do it great.
Yeah.
And man, I'm telling you, talk about strong people.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, incredible. So tomorrow is April 1st as we record this. That's the day that I remember, and a lot of us do, an event at the Saddam Canal.
Yeah.
I've talked a lot about this. I've written about it. Just did a show last week about it, so I talk a lot about this. This season is a time where just so many memories. And then April 10th is when we went into Baghdad. Yeah. As you mentioned earlier, a relatively short period of time in my life, at least, but one that was defining in so many ways and so many lessons I learned there. When you step back from a career like the one that you've had, I'm sure there are so many lessons, so many things you learned and things maybe you even taught to others. What are some of the big lessons, whether it was in combat or just in leadership, in the capacity that you were leading in life? What are some of the big lessons that you learned over a 35, 36-year career in the Marine Corps?
Yeah. Well, it's not about you. I mean, me. It wasn't about me.
Yeah.
And as soon as you make it all about yourself,
right,
that's where you start to come off the rails. Yeah. It's. I don't think it's hard to do. I don't think it's hard to make that distinction that it's not about you. I mean, you talk about this, and I've seen them, the servant leaders. Yeah. Servant leader. That's a neat term. They're leaders who are serving those below, and below those who are that come under them, that's what we should all aspire to be.
That's right. Is
that servant leader, and I think maybe because I always felt like I wasn't great or wasn't that good, that I felt like, man, there's some humility here that's in order. You need to be humble because you don't know everything. Right. Far from it, and you're not the best Marine around. Far from it, and so you have to work hard, and you have to serve those who are serving under you. Yeah. That's I think probably one of the biggest things, and the other one is, living by and not imbuing ourselves with our core values. It can't be just a bumper sticker that we use to get people to join the Marine Corps. Right. That honor, courage, and commitment. Yeah. You have to internalize that and make that part of who you are. Yep. If it's not already. Yeah. Yeah. I think for many Marines, they're well on their way to being, to having those stamped on their soul before they ever come in the Marine Corps. Sure. Right. That's what attracts them. Because I want to be somewhere where these are important. But honor, courage, and commitment. You think about those three things, periodically, and it can't just be a bumper sticker, or a slogan. It has to be a way of life. Yeah. And that's what makes us special. It's what makes us special. If as soon as we start just allowing it to be, noise, that's when we stop being special. Yeah. But, yeah. Yeah. Man, incredible lessons. But it's not about you piece.
I have to remind myself of that all the time.
Yeah.
I think we don't like to live there, but in say it, that changes the conversation everywhere.
Yeah, it does. And, you know, I think everybody has to at times, you know, everybody just crosses that line of, hey, this one, yeah, oh, wait a minute now. You know,
Maybe it is about me.
Yeah, and but I think another thing that I would say was when you make decisions, you know, those have to be, you know, they may be hasty at times. You may have to do, you know, you know, it's like when we do rapid planning, you know, the R2P2, you know, you do rapid planning. Yeah. In order for you to be able to do effective rapid planning, you have to know everything about deliberate planning, all the elements of deliberate planning, so that when you do rapid planning and make rapid decisions, they're underpinned by the understanding of deliberate planning. So every decision that you make really should be deliberate. It should be deliberate, and you have to run it through kind of a little bit of a checks and balances thing too. And one of the ones that I've had is that, hey, when you make a decision later on down the line, you got to be able to look yourself in the mirror and say, I did the right thing and I would do it again. Right. And that's one of the things that I feel really good about, because, you know, there are some decisions that I made when I was, in particular as a general officer, that had consequences. But every single one of those decisions, I can look myself in the mirror and say, you know what? If I had to do it again, I would do the exact same thing. I made the right call.
That's good. And you can only make those decisions based on the information that you have.
Yeah.
So many people live with regret.
Yeah.
You did the best you could with what you had.
Yeah.
Yeah. Incredible. This will be my last question. I feel like I could go on all day. Hope is something that you are good at communicating. You certainly were in my experience. It's something that a lot of people in our world right now are lacking.
Yeah.
The world is crazy, and that's not a political statement, it's just a true statement.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are scared, I think. When you talk about hope, what does that mean to you, and what gives you hope? As you look down the road, you have, you know, kids and grandkids, and you know, what gives you hope for them?
Well, yeah, I believe that that deep down, at least, if not more towards the surface, but at least deep down, I think that people are good. People are generally good, and people want the right things to happen. You know, there's a lot of things going on right now that cloud that. Sure. And that make it, and there is fear right now. There's fear about where we're going, you know, what direction we're heading in, and some of the hot button issues right now are you know, cause for concern by many. There's something to be about, you know, about just being steady. Yeah. You know, you just hang it. You came to my retirement ceremony, and my older brother was there, and I have the best big brother ever anybody could ever have. Yeah. And he was a 2-star Air Force, you know, officer, but best big brother anybody could have. And you know, when we were and we were 3 years apart. I was 3 years younger than he was, and then I had another brother who was 3 years younger than I was. And so all the you know, typical sibling rivalry, boys beating up on each other, kind of, that all happened. Yeah. I mean, and it would typically start with me, you know, knocking around my little brother, and my big brother kind of taking exception to that. So he's knocking me around, but I wouldn't. He always talks about this. I would never quit. He'd knock me down. I'd get up. I'd keep coming at him. Kept coming at him. Kept coming at him. So much so that it took my younger brother going to get my dad to come in and start whacking my big brother. So we all got whacked. You know, kind of
everybody's gonna get hit.
But he just says today that he just won't quit, and that's the family dynamic. You know, being part of a family. And then made it so that I was really comfortable with team sports. Yeah, I always wanted to be on a team, and then which that family dynamic and that team mentality made the Marine Corps home for me. It was perfect. It was just home for me. and then that not giving up, that quality of not giving up, just hanging in there. That's what I think everybody needs right now.
That's good.
You just got to hang in there, and you just got to keep doing the right things.
That's good.
You know, and just be steady. Just steady.
That's good.
And live it a day. Live each day with those values, and I think that good things will eventually start to we'll start to see them appear,
Sure.
and the direction may become a little more clear and a little more positive to many of us.
Right.
that feel like maybe it's not that way now.
Yeah. And it goes back to what you're talking about, faith. There are just things I can't control, but I can keep moving forward.
Yeah. So coming up in the Marine Corps, I like to characterize myself. I would characterize myself as having a quiet faith. Yeah, I wasn't beating people over the head
Sure.
with with it. I mean, it's not that that's wrong. It's great, as far as I'm concerned. It just wasn't my way. But by being that way, or being someone who is very outward with their faith, that can inspire a lot of people. So we shouldn't be afraid of that. That may not be the most politically correct, popular thing
Sure.
to do. When Judgment Day comes, how will you be counted?
Yeah.
I mean, were you someone that maintained your faith and you were steady with your faith?
That's good.
And were you an example to others? And did you inspire other people in that way? That's why I think we all of us need to take on a little bit of responsibility to inspire those that maybe not had the benefit of the direction that our faith has given us over these years.
That's good.
It's just, I don't know. I'm not ready. We certainly aren't in a position where we should be thinking about giving up and just throwing in the towel.
A lot of people are talking that way.
Yeah, and that's not who we are.
No.
We are Americans. We from the United States of America. We are a democracy. We're the longest democracy that's been in existence.
Yeah.
And not ready to give that up.
Right.
And if we can inspire each other by how we carry ourselves and the values that we have. Yeah. I think generally speaking, there's good people out there, and we'll be in a much better direction if we all do that. I think.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I think time will tell too.
Time will tell, but we just have to be willing to keep our head down and keep pressing. And I really feel like I can influence my kids. I can influence the people around me, and I'm going to do that.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
That's awesome, sir. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming in,
Jeremy. It's great to see you.
Thanks for talking. It's really great to me that we can have a relationship after so much time. And I know you've done so many things in life and in the military, but thank you for your influence. And
there's no experience that I hold more dear to myself than my time with 1-5 and in combat with those Marines. 37 years of service. That sticks out like very prominently as my one of the most crowning achievements, or not, again, it's not about me, so it's not really achievement. It was achievement for all those Marines. Sure. I just to be able to sit back but see them perform the way they did. It just made me proud to be a Marine. It made me proud to be an American.
Yeah, I've been asked before. I keep coming to the conclusion of our conversation here, like over and over again. But I've been asked before, why do you have hope? People have asked me. And I'll go back to Iraq with a bunch of young men who rose to the occasion. And I think that's what Americans are made out of.
It's the ultimate report card.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Really appreciate it. Yeah. For those of you that are watching, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Take some time, if you haven't, go and subscribe to the channel so you can get this and more content. And we will talk to you next time.